Good evening and welcome to this edition of the Hamilton Report. I'm hoping that you can hear me. I could not hear the music at the top of the show, so I'm hopeful that you can hear me now. I'm going to try one thing and see if that makes a difference, and hopefully it will. Give me just a moment, and okay, there we go. Like I said, I hope that you can hear me. And thank you, Jen. I appreciate you letting me know that you can hear. And welcome to this edition of the Hamilton Report. I'm Scott J. Hamilton. And as I tell you every week, I am so grateful for the time that you spend with us in this half hour because it's our goal to enlighten, educate, and even entertain on this broadcast. And I have been so fortunate, blessed, in fact, to have so many incredible guests over the last 2 years. I've learned so much from them. And according to the comments I hear from our viewers, you also are learning a lot as well. So that makes me happy. It lets me know that we're providing a service. And the more we all learn collectively, the smarter we become as a party and as individuals. Tonight, I have no guest, but I've got plenty on my mind this week. We are experiencing the Great Divide in this country. America has never been more divided than it is right now. The interesting thing about this, at least to my way of thinking, is the division is not coming from ordinary citizens, people like you and me. It starts at the top and it works its way down. For 6 years, my husband absolutely did not understand the vitriol that I had every time that the 45th president was on television. I would yell and scream, and he would come to understand, although that wasn't helping anyone except me to vent some anger in return for what I was hearing. But when you have someone like that in a position of power that doesn't just enable, but in fact encourages bad behavior, it's no wonder that we become more and more divided. But I'm not going to lay everything at his feet. In fact, there are many people that this applies to as well. Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson is arguably one of the smartest, finest candidates ever to be nominated to the United States Supreme Court. She has had a resounding response from people all over the country, except the Republicans in Congress. And that brings me to another point, but it's still tied together. When I heard senators interrupting her, talking over her, treating her as if she was not even in the room, they didn't want to hear what she had to say, but rather they wanted to hear their own voices. They wanted to get those sound bites on the evening news, and they did. But at what cost, really? Mitch McConnell was relatively neutral early, but then very quickly started not just supporting the kind of treatment that she was getting, but actually encouraging it among Senate Republicans. That's an outrage, because as we watched those hearings, it became clearer and clearer and clearer that what this was race baiting in a major way. For Lindsey Graham to huff and puff the way that he did, it was an embarrassment to himself and to this country. And then Ted Cruz, oh, what a piece of work, saying that she would be nothing but a rubber stamp for the ultra liberal agenda. There is nothing in her background that would make that a true statement. There is nothing in her rulings, of which they all have access, that would give anyone that indication. And yet still, she has been beaten up on this journey. Thankfully, it appears now that she does have enough votes to be confirmed to the United States Supreme Court. But why was all of that necessary? Well, I submit to you that it was very unnecessary. And frankly, it was harmful. What about the boys and girls who were sitting at home watching this kind of treatment? Who among them would want to grow up and have a life in public service, seeing the kind of treatment that she got. Sadly, I think it hurt a lot of people in very different ways. Some more subtle and some more outright. And I say that because I've talked to a number of women, some of whom have been in violent relationships in the past. And they were actually triggered by some of the questioning that went on in this Senate circus. I'll just call it that. I'm grateful that there were some smart people that intervened. Cory Booker certainly comes to mind because as he talked and made her weep, I also found myself tearing up because of what he said. Today is the 54th anniversary of the death, the assassination, the murder of Dr. King. 54 years. And that dream, like so many others, seem almost nostalgic now because we have swung in a direction that is harmful to all of us today, but pretends poorly for the future. I'm not just talking about people in Congress, though. If you see an organization whose name includes things like freedom or patriot or liberty, fairness, chances are really very strong that these are not people who are patriots. They believe in liberty for themselves, but not necessarily for other people. And freedom, well, that's a very, very subjective term to most of these groups because they want freedom to do as they choose, as they please, but they don't want the same thing for you and me. This is pervasive in our nation now. Where does it end? Sadly, if we don't do something as individuals and as a society, there doesn't seem to be much positive outlook for this country. I can't imagine what it would be like if Republicans were in control of the House and Senate, the damage that they would do. There's already talk of eliminating Social Security and Medicare, the very things that are keeping so many Americans alive today. Can you imagine that? They're calling it socialism. Well, it is a socialist program, a democratic socialist program that helps people and does not hurt them. When I look at the possibilities of change, it's not just in Washington. I'm also looking at our legislature right here. Even if you never turn on faux news, chances are really good that you did not escape the fact that just last week, Oklahoma's governor ran to Fox News, palled up with his buddy Tucker Carlson to whine some more about the McGirt ruling that was 2 years ago. He is still so butthurt over this that he cannot let it go. He has continued to pick fights with our tribes at every turn. And that's a shame because our indigenous Americans here in Oklahoma give so much to our state. And I'm not talking about just casinos. I'm talking about good jobs. I'm talking about health care for their people. I'm talking about supporting education in a profound way. And they're doing some things that are just right. So why are we fighting with them? The reality is we aren't. It's the governor. Looking at the lieutenant governor, and if I ask you to say his name out loud, you probably wouldn't be able to because he is missing more than he is in front of a camera. And yet his name is securely tied up with a government welfare check written to the owners of a barbecue joint based in Oklahoma City, who were charged with remodeling and reopening restaurants in some of our state parks. What started as a bid has now turned into millions and millions of dollars of overrun for this company, paying for their management fees, paying for renovations. That's a horror that should not happen. But again, that's a divide. When we can spend that kind of money on restaurants for state tourism, but fail to publicly support, financially support public education, then we have a very big problem and a real divide. I mentioned a moment ago, talk about doing away with Medicare and Social Security. Do you know that once someone serves in Congress, that they get health care for life, the very best health care that money can buy? And that's not true for very many of us. Some of us are fortunate to be able to maintain the health care that we enjoyed in our jobs, but those days are quickly moving past. Not so for our elected officials. And you know, what's fascinating to me is that not one of our congressional representatives voted to put a cap on the price of insulin. Over 250,000 Oklahomans rely on insulin to live. And the costs can become so exorbitant that people literally have to choose between taking their insulin or putting food on the table. That's horrifying, and it never should be that way, but they all voted against it. You see where the divide is. It's us versus them. The people that are tasked with representing Oklahoma in our nation's capital are actually not representing us at all. If you're like me, I think you've probably become weary of talking about the Oklahoma standard. Well, I suppose that every state has a standard, but the standards that we espouse here in Oklahoma have done so little to help people. Yeah, we're polite, or we nod at the street corner, or we say hello as we enter into a supermarket. But beyond that, there's little evidence that we care about one another in this state, or rather that a section of our state could care less about the rest of us. That's where balance has to come back into play. Because until things are becoming more balanced, we will not have a voice. We will not have a say. Senator Lankford and Inhofe, both of whom have been really poor representatives in our Senate. Both of them swore early on that they would not support the nomination of Judge Brown Jackson because she doesn't stand for Oklahoma values. They hadn't even heard what she had to say, and they made that assumption, which unfortunately is something that we do too often in our society today. I was reading a piece today on the Don't Say Gay bill in Florida and so many other states, the anti-trans laws that are being passed, and even attacks on LGBT people in general. These are from state houses across the country. These pieces of legislation are trying to solve a problem that does not exist for the most part. They are criminalizing things that never should be criminalized, like education, like teaching. Well, I saw a letter purportedly from a teacher in Palm Beach in Florida saying that from now on, they would not refer to students as he or she, him or her, that they would use only them and they, because he didn't want to get in trouble. Further, he said that he would remove all books from his classroom that talk about relationships, including marriages, where there's talk of a husband and wife, because the way the law is written, it has to apply in that direction also. I don't know if this was a legitimate letter that is being circulated. I do know that 1 million moms is all upset and huffy as they get at every turn. There, first of all, are not 1 million moms. They're a bunch of kooks that just want to get out in front of the TV cameras, blasting what is good and what is right. Friends, we must do something to close this divide. It's not serving the Republicans. It's not serving the American people. and it certainly is not serving Democrats. And here we are in Oklahoma, as racially divided as we have ever been. We are divided because people allow it to continue. Not just race, but when we look at the fact that Oklahoma is the 51st worst place in America for women to live, what is that saying about over half of our population? That they're undeserving of a high quality of life, that they're undeserving of economic opportunities? It's a sad statement, is what it is. And that lies squarely with the governor and the Republicans in our legislature. I realize that I'm bouncing a lot between Oklahoma and Washington because, frankly, it's very difficult to separate the two because they're so overlapping. With the former president still out there endorsing people, and he endorsed this governor, and this governor was thrilled beyond belief to get that endorsement. And I guess some people will vote for him just because of that. Well, I'm certainly not one of them, and I doubt that you are either. So where do we go from here? How do we bridge the gender divide? How do we bridge the sexual orientation divide, the gender identity divide, the divide between young and old people within our communities? How do we begin to heal this rift that has gotten worse and bigger and darker? Well, the first thing we have to do is elect more Democrats. I'm not telling you anything new, anything that you don't know, and anything that you haven't heard me say over and over again. But that's what it takes. And to do that, it requires two things. One, we must offer good quality candidates. And two, we must support them and vote for them. As far as candidates this year, I can tell you I am supremely pleased with the folks who have stepped up and agreed to serve their community, their state, their people in the House, the Senate, and other statewide offices, and yes, even in Washington. But it's not enough that we have worked hard. Our chair has, since the end of summer last year, has been devoting so much time and energy to find, identify, and talk with potential candidates, people who will make a positive change for Oklahoma. And she's done a great job, along with Eric Proctor, our vice chair. I have met some of these folks, and I've got to tell you that life in Oklahoma would be better if we were to elect them. And so the next thing is we have to vote for them. But it's not just you and me. It's not just people who are active in Oklahoma politics on the Democratic side of the aisle. I'm talking about we need to find, to educate, and to empower new voters. You can do that very, very simply right from our website. You can hand your phone to someone, they fill out the information, and within a few days, they will receive a completed voter registration. All they do is check on the party, sign it, send it back postpaid. No cost to you, no cost to them. The party bears the cost for all of this. Why? Because we believe that apathy has taken hold and has been in place for a long time. Democrats say, we don't have a shot. We don't have a chance. Well, that attitude has to change. And it changes with you and me talking to our friends, our neighbors, in social settings where everyone is relaxed and comfortable. Because we have to demonstrate what we have to offer is a better thing for today and for our future. We have an opportunity to do that. I want to let you know about one of the things that we have coming up that I think is one of my favorite events that we do every year, and that's our Campaign Academy. Campaign Academy 2022 is coming up on April 23rd. It's for candidates, it's for campaign workers and volunteers, even professionals. We will have some of the finest training available everywhere, dealing with everything from digital and online marketing to how to address the media, to how to fundraise, and so much more. And this cost is so minimal. We just hope that we will come close to breaking even on it. It's not a fundraising effort for the Oklahoma Democratic Party. Instead, it's an education opportunity, one that I hope that you will consider taking advantage of. Again, that's April 23rd in Tulsa, and you will see all of the information on our website at okdemocrats.org. Beyond that, I want you to think about the people in your circle who may vote sometimes, may not other times. And if it's been too long since they voted, the state has automatically taken them off of the voter rolls. So check with your family and friends. Do they need to re-register? Do they need to sign up for their absentee ballots, which we encourage everyone to do so that you have time to reflect on the candidates and also do research on any propositions that are coming up. That's extremely important. So these are things that we can all be doing right now so that we don't get caught in a crunch time leading up to November. We have elections next week. We have school board and city council races all across the state. I personally don't have one in my voting district, but many people do. It's also one of the lowest turnouts of any election. We can change that. Some of our local elections are literally decided by 3 or 4 votes. We can make that change at the local level. We just have to do the work in getting people to vote. We also need volunteers. We have begun phone banking to energize people into voting, to explain to them why it's important, to get their commitment, to help them set up a plan to vote. And it takes very little of your time. If you have 5 hours a week, we will take it. If you have 1 hour a week, we will gladly take that. We have many volunteer opportunities, and we also are connecting volunteers with campaigns who need volunteers to help them drop literature and knock doors. So there are many ways for you to get involved. Even if you can't support the party financially, your volunteer time is worth its weight in gold. Again, all of that information is on our website. So if you and I, can make a difference in engaging people and stanching the flow of apathy, then we have a real shot at making things better for all of us. You know, it's interesting to me that when you hear a Republican politician talking, it's the same old talking points, the same old gods, gays, guns. It's tiresome. It's boring. But when you talk to a Democrat who is running for office and they tell you, you know, I drive this same street every single day, and I'm so tired of dodging the potholes, and I want to do something about that for our community. Those are the people who make positive change happen. And so I hope that you will listen to them, support them with your time and your effort, and yes, even with your money. We all have a place in this election season, and it's time for all of us to raise our hands and say, what more can I be doing? Our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter. Thank you, Amber, for sharing this quote from Dr. King. I want to read it one more time. Our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter. It's time for us to no longer be silent. In fact, it's time for us to raise our voices with a very clear clarion call to positive change in our state and in our nation. Friends, I appreciate you listening to my thoughts this evening, and I would love to hear from you what your thoughts are. And as I reminded viewers on Friday during Alicia's live, when people say, well, the party should do this or the party should do that, I want to remind you that the party is not me. It's not the people who work in our office. It's not our elected leadership. The party is everyone who registers as a Democrat. We all have a place to play, and we all have work to do, and we all can make a difference working together. Just a reminder that this is Sexual Assault Awareness and Prevention Month. We'll be talking more about that in the coming weeks with resources that are available and a personal plea. If you or someone you know has been a victim of sexual assault and you have worked through that process and would be interested in sharing your story with our viewers, I would love to hear from you. You can send me a note or give me a call at the ODP office any day. And if you don't want your face on camera but are willing to share your story, we'll make that happen as well. Friends, thank you for tuning in this evening. I hope that you have a great week. Be safe. Take good care of yourself and each other. And I look forward to seeing you again next Monday night at 6:30. For all of us at the Oklahoma Democratic Party, I'm Scott J. Hamilton. Good night.